Well, obviously there's real changes in the ruling family. That goes without saying. You've got leading princes being arrested and the concentration of authority in the hands of the crown prince and presumably fairly soon the man will be king. But there's something deeper going on as well that's in the structure of the Saudi state. It's not just that leading princes have been arrested, but all these various parts of the Saudi state that had been their fiefdoms or various sectors, such as the religious sector, that had a real degree of autonomy from the central government, are now being reined in. And so what you're seeing right now is a micromanaging future monarch who's really reaching very, very far down to make sure that all structures answer directly to him. Well, this is just a very different way for Saudi Arabia to operate, and obviously the biggest risk for this is that the king will make some mistakes. And he's already gone out very, very far on a limb on foreign policy in Yemen, in the region, in Lebanon, confrontation with Iran, and there's possibility that the Saudi leadership will wake up 1 year from now and thinking we're entangled in all these disputes far more than we can handle. And also domestically, I mean, he's certainly got a very ambitious plan for reorienting the Saudi economy, but to sort of place all the bets on this ambitious sort of Vision 2030 and the various plans that are being sketched out runs the risk of failure. The Saudi system used to move very, very slowly. If it made mistakes, it was by inaction. If it's going to make mistakes right now, it's going to be by over ambitious action. One real interesting thing about Saudi Arabia, one way that the society has changed, is it just has become an awful lot more politically engaged. Citizens who didn't used to have an opinion or who simply were witnesses to what was going on are suddenly talking and talking very publicly. Now, of course, there were always discussions that took place in Saudi Arabia, but they tended to be within restricted groups in university classrooms, in mosques, in family settings, and so on. With the advent of social media, they are now increasingly public, and you've got independent voices in Saudi Arabia. You know, Twitter seems to be the medium of choice for many of them that have thousands and thousands and thousands of followers. So these are no longer just private discussions behind closed doors. It's not harnessed to anything organized. It's not harnessed to labor unions or political parties or election campaigns, but it is out there. And you've got Saudis that are reacting to these changes. The regime knows that this is going on, and it may give the regime a great way for monitoring activity, but they're also beginning to show some nervousness as well. For instance, they have arrested a very prominent preacher, Salman al-Auda, not because of something he tweeted, but because of something he didn't tweet. He didn't tweet in support of the regime stand for on Qatar. And then later on, sent out an innocuous message about the hope for reconciliation. That was going too far. So that's what's going on. Now, can this translate into political action? It's not harnessed to anything organized, so that makes it difficult. But still, the kinds of discussions that Saudis are having remind me of the ones that I would hear in Egypt, say, a decade ago, where you would have politically engaged citizens who talk very, very freely. In Egypt, it was Facebook rather than Twitter. Or sometimes they would just send, SMS messages to each other. But what that did was create this kind of like public sphere where people were talking about events, reacting to them, and it enabled some kind of political action. We've seen nothing like that in Saudi Arabia before, and it may be that the regime is able to learn the lessons of what happened in Egypt in 2011 and police this much more effectively. But it's making for a different kind of political society than ever existed before, and it's emboldening those who are pressing for change, who are saying essentially, look, we've got youth behind us, because this is seen very much as a youth movement within Saudi Arabia.